Greetings! Welcome to the Arts Overlook. I'm your host, Ian Goldsmith. Every episode strives to highlight the vast arts and entertainment of the Cedar Valley. This excellent new episode is characterized by two categories, local theater and local authors. We will first give you a preview of the new show Clue, playing at Oster Regent Theater. We preview the new show Mauritius, playing at Theater UNI. We get an exclusive look at the book release for former Cedar Valley resident Bruce Hopkins. And I close with a sit-down interview with local author Len Froyen. Don't go away. Arts Overlook starts now.
Art is thriving in the Cedar Valley. It's everywhere. But if you don't know where to look, you could miss it. This is your local arts perspective. This is the Arts Overlook.
I think it was Colonel Mustard with the rope in the dining room. I think it was Mrs. White with the candlestick in the library. I'm sure you've all played the classic board game Clue at one time or another. Although, I'm sure when you do play, you don't talk like this. The famous family game takes on epic proportions as it moves to the stage of the Oster Regent Theater. Mike Mennen clues us in on the details.
The Oster Regent Theater, home of the Cedar Falls Community Theater, will be trying to take audience members' minds away from the winter blues and turn their frowns upside down with a classic mystery piece that comes with a lot of comedy. An experienced cast of 16 actors will be taking the classic board game of Clue out of the box and bringing it to life on stage at the Oster Regent.
It was interesting. We had 36 show up to audition for basically 10 lead roles. And so I could have cast it really three different ways. Everybody was very good in these auditions, and that's unusual anymore. You know, a lot of times you get people that are just trying out, it's a new experience. But to be lucky enough, I guess, to have 10 or 12 people with a lot of experience is unusual. And so I'm pretty lucky with this.
This favorite family board game was also a movie in the 80s, and now it takes on epic proportions as it moves to the stage.
The script is a lot like the movie, but it was created for the stage after the movie came out. So it's a little bit different because they had to manipulate it so it works on the stage. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot like the movie. So if you're a fan of the movie, you're gonna like this. You'll hear a lot of the same lines, but the way we have to stage things are a little different, a little more creative.
They're going to look forward to seeing, for one thing, a set with more working doors on it than I've ever seen in my life. It's amazing. It's a really good job on the set. Costumes are amazing in this show. We're all in the 50s, mid to late 50s, the McCarthy era, you know, and costumes are just dead on. You're really going to like that.
The plot concerns a murder at a mansion occupied by several suspects. This creative look at crime gives the audience a chance to guess in the selection of details, like which suspect is the murderer, what weapon was used in the crime, and in what room was it committed. The show has multiple possible endings. The audience is invited to join Colonel Mustard, Mrs. White, Mrs. Peacock, Mr. Green, Professor Plum, Ms. Scarlet, the maid, the butler, the detective, and a host of other characters to solve and laugh with this clever whodunit.
Who killed him, and where, and with what?
Clue performances are scheduled for February 21st through March 2nd at the Oster Regent Theater at 1st and Main Street in Cedar Falls. Friday and Saturday performances are at 7:30 p.m. and Sunday matinees are at 2 p.m. The box office is open Monday through Friday from 1 to 5 p.m. For more information about tickets, check the theater website at www.osterregent.org.
Thanks, Mike. Again, if you want tickets to Clue, get them today by visiting the Oster Regent website at www.osterregent.org. What do you think of when you hear the phrase stamp collecting? Exactly. You think of crime and deception. I'm kidding, of course. If crime is the first thing you think of, then I'm not sure what types of stamps you're collecting. Are you curious to see how these two concepts relate to each other? Well, that's the central focus of the new show Mauritius at Theater UNI. The students and staff of the Strayerwood Theater at UNI kick off their spring semester with the new production, Mauritius.
From a plot standpoint, it's about stamp collecting and some very obsessive stamp collectors. We have Jackie, who's a young lady who just went through the death of her mother and who has a ton of bills and really has had a rough childhood. And her mother has left her this collection of stamps that came from the grandfather. And she would like to get out of debt and just wants to, are these stamps worth anything? Well, some people look at those stamps and they find out, oh, they are worth a lot, although they don't tell her right off the bat. Her half-sister comes into the scene and just wants them for sentimental value, doesn't want to sell them. And what folks want to understand is we're talking stamps that are worth millions of dollars.
So it's a lot of just trying to figure out who's the good person, who's the bad person, is anybody really the bad person? It's definitely a struggle for everybody to get exactly what they want, and nobody holds back.
So there's some wonderful characters. There's Jackie, and then there's Mary, the sister. There's Philip, who owns a stamp shop, who's kind of a sarcastic guy. Not exactly what I call an A+ in customer service. There's Dennis, who's kind of the middleman, charming. And then there's Sterling, who's the major obsessive guy, tad on the violent side, but in a strange way charming as well. And so we have 5 really challenging characters for this ensemble cast.
In addition to the challenge of bringing these compelling characters to life, the cast has also faced the challenge of a shortened rehearsal schedule. Rehearsals for Mauritius have only been going on for about 4 weeks, which is a full 2 weeks shorter than the typical rehearsal process.
Everybody's been doing a really great job. So even though it's been such a short rehearsal process, everybody's picked it up really quickly, and it's actually been really pretty painless for the most part.
I have to tell you, it's the best cast I've had since I've been at UNI. I've been here 14 years. And I've had some fine casts, but this is the best cast in terms of talent, work ethic, and probably most importantly for me, attitude. Everybody's been very, very positive. They've been collaborative. They've been open to what I've had to say.
This was an incredible experience to get to learn what it's like to really put a show on its feet in 4 weeks. There are no coming in and not knowing what you're saying. You come in and you know what you're saying and you make choices right off the bat. And so it was fun.
Regardless of the shortened rehearsal time, the cast has developed a good sense of the show's deeper themes.
Betrayal is a huge part of the whole thing. I think everybody at some point in the show feels betrayed by at least one person, and Steve has said throughout the entire process that every scene has a betrayal, and some of them are really obvious, some of them are not so much. And I think greed has been a big theme in the show. Everybody really just wants to get what they want out of this, and they aren't afraid to hurt anybody else.
Really, what makes a person bad or what makes a villain? It's not necessarily about good and bad. It's about why they're doing what they're doing. I think that's the coolest part about this show is a lot of people may think that one person is a bad person, but when you really look at the themes in the play and how everything is happening, you may want to question those choices.
Now, don't get the wrong impression with this show. Just because it's about stamps doesn't mean that it's not thrilling.
The show is about stamps, sort of. I mean, that's the big theme of the show, and people think that's kind of weird. They hear you say, oh, this is a show about a stamp collection. They're like, oh, really? But it's a show that really puts people on their seats. When we had crew view, when we had a first audience, people were literally sitting on the edges of their seats.
I describe the show as kind of a runaway train, and rhythmically, that's what I really think Mauritius is. It's a show that starts off like many shows. You're developing relationships, getting that background information, that exposition out, but then the rhythm starts to pick up and pick up and pick up.
And I feel like we've actually reached that goal. It really does feel like the momentum picks up with each passing moment, and the comments that we've heard from the audience that we've had thus far have been, oh, I was leaning forward in my seat by the last scene. And I mean, you really don't know where it's going to go, which is really exciting.
Mauritius will be playing at Theater UNI during the weekend of February 27th, 28th, and March 1st at 7:30 p.m., as well as March 2nd at 2 p.m. It will play the following weekend on March 6th, 7th, and 8th at 7:30 p.m. and conclude on March 9th at 2 p.m. Some viewer discretion is advised due to adult language. To get tickets to see Mauritius, you can call the UNI box office at 273-6381. You can also visit the Strayerwood box office between noon and 5 on Monday through Friday, or visit the Theater UNI website at www.uni.edu/theater. For the Arts Overlook, I'm Ian Goldsmith. Again, if you want tickets to Mauritius, visit the Theater UNI website at www.uni.edu/theater. For our next two features, we look at two recently published authors. The first is Bruce Hopkins, an environmental author and former Cedar Valley resident. He and his wife Jeanette hosted an event at the Hearst Center in celebration of Dr. Hopkins' new book release. The second author is Cedar Falls resident Len Froyen, whose new book focuses on gratitude and how it can help lead us to a more fulfilling life. Let's learn more. The Hearst Center for the Arts recently hosted a book release for Iowan author and former Cedar Valley resident Bruce Hopkins. Dr. Hopkins composed the recently published book, Truth in the Rivers. After being introduced by his wife and successful children's author Jeanette Hopkins, Bruce read excerpts from the book and shared stories with the audience about his life. Growing up in the mountains of New York, Dr. Hopkins came to Cedar Falls in 1975 to be the director of the Gifted program for the Area Education Agency. In addition to his work in education, he has been a writer all of his life as a poet and essayist. Dr. Hopkins is also a naturalist and focuses many of his works on the environment.
And I refer to him as a modern-day Thoreau, because he's basically a philosopher, he's all about the environment, and he's just a brilliant man.
Truth in the Rivers is Hopkins' second published book. The book is a collection of poems and essays by Hopkins, as well as some stunning artwork by architect and illustrator Howard Horry.
Well, the book is also inspired by some beautiful imagery by his illustrator, and so I think it's all about the text, and it's all about the vision of visual art. So it's a road where visual and literary arts meet.
The poems, essays, and artwork attempt to encapsulate a glimpse at how the issues of nature, culture, politics, and education impact all of society, specifically here in Iowa.
Well, the larger title of Truth in the Rivers, really what Iowa has best is rivers. So the rivers became representative of what I saw, and I think topography has a lot to do with how we see ourselves. And so again, I was really trying to get some definition of Iowa into the book, even in essays that didn't concern Iowa. My assignment to myself in writing this book was to write a book not about Iowa, but to have at least a portion of Iowa in the book, and say, I am an Iowan writing as an Iowa author about what it is that I'm writing about.
The book is organized into three main sections. The first of the three sections is titled Ganbari, a Japanese word for courage, determination, and resilience. The book recounts the experiences of artist Howard Horry as a young Japanese American during the World War II era. Hopkins' writing with Horry's illustrations depict what life was like for Howard and his family being forced into an American concentration camp. The second section of the book focuses on civil rights, particularly the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Hopkins tells of his experiences during the civil rights movement and his firsthand witnessing of the harsh treatment towards his African-American colleagues. One of his colleagues is Lou Porter, the co-owner and president of KBBG Radio in Waterloo. The third section of the book is titled Road Trips. In this section, the book comes full circle as Hopkins' essays on nature and road trips with his grandchildren expresses the themes of human resilience and sustaining the creative voice.
Most authors will look at you and say they had the reader in mind. I didn't have the reader in mind. I had the story in mind. The impact on the reader is, I hope to enlarge the conversation about social justice.
In addition to social justice awareness, Dr. Hopkins aims to bring awareness to the environment and hopes to see Iowa become a leader in environmental standards. To pick up a copy of Truth in the Rivers by Bruce Hopkins, you can purchase the book in the gift shop of the Hearst Center for the Arts, located at 304 West Searly Boulevard in Cedar Falls. Reporting for the Arts Overlook, I'm Ian Goldsmith. Welcome back to the Arts Overlook. As always, I am your host, Ian Goldsmith, and today we are trying something a little new, a little different. We are sitting here with a local author, and it is my great privilege to welcome Mr. Len Froyen to the stage. Glad you could be here with us today.
Thank you.
Len, before we get started with anything else, can you just tell us a little bit about your background? where you came from?
Well, I'm married to Gail for 55 years. We have 3 children, all of whom are UNI graduates. We have lived most of our adult life in Cedar Falls and really appreciate the fact that this has been our neighborhood for so many years. I taught at UNI for 33 years and retired in 1994. And I was ordained as a deacon in the Catholic Church in 1989 and served at St. Stephen's for many years, where I got to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly. It has been my privilege getting to know you the last few years. Among your list of accomplishments, you can now add a published author to that. You just published the book, Gratitude, Affirming One Another Through Stories. Can you tell us a little bit on what led you or inspired you to write this book?
Actually, it began as an experience in journaling. I journaled for a number of years, largely to reflect upon my own life, asking myself, in a sense, what kind of story am I writing with my life? And I noticed that as I would go back and reflect upon those journal entries, that gratitude kept coming up. My thankfulness for people and experiences, the circumstances of my life. And I also noticed that in those times when I was kind of down, those times when life wasn't what I would like it to be, that if I began to think about the things for which I am grateful, that my life began to turn around. And I also noticed that when I was working with other people and affirming their stories, the life that they were writing with their stories, that I contributed something to the happiness of their lives, and it contributed to mine as well. So gratitude gradually became a part of the way in which I was thinking about life, and a way in which I was trying to say to myself, how can you write a better life? You can write a better life if gratitude is a centerpiece in your life.
Absolutely, that's wonderful. As you said, the entire book is really themed on the concept of gratitude. And you really spend most of the book explaining what gratitude is and how it can impact our lives and our story. Can you just speak a little bit about that, about in your own words what gratitude is and what it can do for us?
Okay. I think of gratitude as actually having 3 dimensions: gratefulness, thankfulness, and happiness. That gratefulness is essentially being pleased with, happy about what we have ourselves, what the talents, the abilities, the things that we can do that make us a person in our own right. I think of thankfulness as what has come to us through the gift of other people's lives, how they have enriched our lives, have enabled us to be who we are, and what we can contribute to their lives. So thankfulness is a way of trying to put into practice what we have been given as a gift. And happiness is the outcome. It's the feeling of our having come to an understanding of who we are and what we have to offer and what other people bring into our lives that's worth celebrating.
Definitely, that's beautifully said. One quote that really struck me personally when I was reading the first chapter, I haven't had a chance to read the entire book yet, but you say, our efforts to fill every moment of the day-to-day with productivity and accomplishment disturb and undermine the natural rhythm of life. That's a really specific quote, but I think that quote spoke to me personally because I know for me it's really easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle and always trying to feel how much did I accomplish today, when really that's not what life is about. Can you speak a little bit about how gratitude fits into our modern society of go, go, go all the time?
I think that gratitude must be an intentional decision. In other words, we're always looking into the future. We're looking ahead. We're always trying to make plans for tomorrow, the next day. Gratitude is, in many respects, a now experience. It's an attempt to find right now, what's going on now that's worth remembering, thinking about, appreciating. But as long as we're running ahead, constantly trying to make things into the future, trying to have something more, it's hard to be grateful for what we already have. So in some respects, I think of gratitude as an already experience. It's an already in a sense of what's good about life, just the way it is. And then taking that spirit of gratitude into the next day and then the next day. So it does require in some way a kind of slow down approach to life, where you intentionally look at how gratitude is in some way enriching your life and the lives of others.
Yeah, I think that's such a great lesson for all of us to remember and consciously choose every single day to remember to be gracious for the things that we have. Another quote that really struck me in the introduction of the book when you're explaining what gratitude is gratitude is waking up each day, looking to the heavens from which all good things have their beginnings, sliding out of bed onto the solid reality of another day, and grasping still another opportunity begging to be taken. The day is a thank you yet to be known, born out of imagination and ambition held close to our heart's desire. That's almost poetic, I think. What I love about this quote is that it demonstrates how much hope is laced throughout the book, but I think also how much the concept of gratitude can lead us to just live more positive, hopeful, in the moment lives. Do you have anything to say about that?
I think hope is in many respects a function of imagination. And we begin to imagine a future, and a day-to-day way in which we come into that future creates a sense of hope. And as I'm sitting here thinking and looking at you, I'm thinking about imagination. I'm thinking about a person who has a marvelous imagination and who has that way of creating a sense of hope and happiness and laughter and fun in the lives of others because this imagination of yours fits your personality.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're a person, as I think I said to you before we started talking, you're a person who has a reassuring personality, who just invites people to be who they are. And I don't want to embarrass you by saying that here, but I think sometimes that we have to look at how people are instruments of hope. And people become instruments of hope by the way in which they tell their story, but also the way in which they affirm the story of others. Because everyone is trying to write a better story. So how can we help each other write a better story? One of the ways you do it is to find fun in the stories that we're already telling.
Wow, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hopefully I'm not red on the camera. I'm embarrassed with the great compliments. Thank you so much for that. I think that was beautifully said.
Beautifully felt.
Yeah.
Beautifully felt on my part.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So you spend a lot of the story, or a lot of the book, telling stories from your own life, and you focus a lot on that concept of storytelling and writing our own stories. Can you say a little bit about what is it about telling stories that has such a powerful impact on us, and particularly how that fits into gratitude?
I chose story because I think in order to really understand and experience and appreciate gratitude, you have to feel your way into it. And story is the way in which we feel ourselves back in to the lives we have lived and feel ourselves into the way in which we're living at the present time. That essentially, from my point of view, we are first and foremost feeling persons. And feelings are the things that enable us to find in our lives something that we've experienced in the past, but we didn't get totally in touch with it. So one of the things I like about story is it enables us to go back and reconstruct and rediscover experiences in our lives that we can now feel once again. And now that we're older and we bring a history to it, we can feel with a cognition, with a mental and intellectual way of looking at it that we missed before. So story is a way of trying to recapture our feelings and to reconnect. And so what I hope is that people who read the book will find a story as they read it that's a story that connects them to a part of their life that they fully appreciate, more so because they're feeling it once again.
Wow. I could just have you talk up here for an hour. I love, you're so wise. Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on all of that. When I'm reading the book, I really get this sense of, and I'm hearing your stories, this sense that you're talking to me directly, which I think is a big testament to you and your writing. And it's very clear, even just hearing you talk, too, your incredible grasp on your own life and on gratitude and everything involved. One way specifically that I really, as I'm reading it, I feel that you're talking to me directly as a reader is at the end of every chapter you have reflections for us, the reader, to reflect on our own time and kind of help us through the story. What was your reason for including those reflections for us, and what do you hope that those reflections do for the reader?
I hope the reflections will enable the person to go back and personalize their story. I do hope that when people are reading my story, they will find a counterpart story in their own life, and that will direct their thinking about the story and enable them to find gratitude in the story. But in addition to that, I think the reflection exercises provide them another way of thinking about their story and rewriting that story, in a sense, in their own imagination, and their way of looking back in ways that enable them to find a sense of themselves that they missed the first time through. So it's not a book that identifies practices. Here's a practice, here's a practice. This is the practice. This is the practice which I believe more than any other practice enables someone to make their story a way into gratitude. And once they've done that, they'll begin to use their daily story as a way of attesting to gratitude in their lives.
Definitely. To tie everything together, and you've already been alluding to this, what do you hope is the main lasting impression or message that you hope is left on the reader of this book?
I hope that people, by reading the stories and listening to gratitude as they read the stories, will come to a better understanding of the power of gratitude to make their lives. Because I think gratitude has a way of connecting us spiritually to some of the more profound features and aspects of our life. So my hope is that when people finish it, they'll say to themselves, yeah, I'm in touch with something here, and I want to remain in touch with it for my benefit and the benefit of others.
Yeah. Well, I personally feel enlightened just by this 15-minute conversation. So thank you so much for that. Very last question, maybe the most important for the people watching, not that they've heard a little bit about this, is where can we get the book? Where can we find the book?
You can purchase the book at University Book and Supply, at Barnes & Noble, and on Amazon. Those are the 3 primary places. There are other booksellers, but those are the places that I know of that people have told me have been instrumental in their purchasing the book.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Len, I can't thank you enough for being here and for this conversation. I hope that we can continue this conversation once cameras stop rolling as well. For all of you watching at home, make sure that you definitely go out and check out the book Gratitude, Affirming One Another Through Stories by Len Froyen. I'm about halfway through it, and it's already been a wonderful read for me. We will be right back on Arts Overlook. Well, I want to thank Len again for coming into the studio for the interview. He is honestly one of the most sincere, genuine, and affirming people that I know. That's all for this episode of the Arts Overlook. In the spirit of being thankful, thank you, the audience, for tuning in to yet another episode. Until next time, I'm Ian Goldsmith. Thanks for watching.